We're back from a weekend split in Minnesota, 76-69 at St. Cloud, and then 90-76 against a nationally ranked Duluth team. Now, you guys really spent a long time in the locker room after that St. Cloud game, and then even longer in film when we got to the hotel for the night before Duluth. So, what kind of response were you getting from the guys after that game? I'm sure you guys had a lot to unpack. What was the response from the guys like?
Really, really upset. Sad, mad, frustrated, but not at each other, just at themselves and our group for losing a game that we had no right to lose. And they were angry and hurt by it. And it might have been, which is unbelievably crazy, it might have been the most angry, sad locker room and bus I've ever been on, including the end of year and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't necessarily try to dissuade them from feeling that way. I kind of said, "That's good. I hope you do feel that way. You should." But it wasn't like negative, if that it doesn't make sense, but it was how we felt. Like it was angry and sad, but in a way of like, we cannot let this happen again. And I felt like we deserved to lose, and there wasn't blame on anyone other than like collective self. And it was interesting. I thought it was going to be really positive for us going forward, especially after we got swept on the weekend. So it was still a positive, but obviously the turnaround of that game came a lot faster than maybe what I anticipated, in that we beat an incredible team the next night. So it was interesting, kind of one of the most odd, 2-day periods I've ever had. But hopefully we can still learn from the St. Cloud loss, more so than let the one win be like, oh yeah, we figured it out, because nothing really changed other than we tried our hardest the next night and made shots and won.
Yeah, I was going to say, because on Sunday it felt like everything was better. I mean, we were shooting at a much better clip. The defense was there. We were much better at the free throw line coming down the stretch in a close game. So what would you say was the biggest component in that? Was it just that raw kind of anger and that fuel from the day before?
I think so. I think the focus was, again, like something I've never seen before, and it started after the game, and it didn't change till after the Duluth game. We had off yesterday, and I'm really curious and hopeful that we have that level of focus today, and that we learned from it, and it wasn't just a blip. And then the other part of it is when shots go in. I mean, there's did we focus way more heading into the Duluth game? Yes. Was our mental state a lot better heading into the Duluth game? Absolutely. But we made everything against Duluth, and we missed everything against St. Cloud. And so we could have very easily made everything against St. Cloud without having the right mental state, and we would have won by 20, and we would have felt pretty good about ourselves. And if we missed everything against Duluth, we probably lose that game anyway. But sometimes I feel like you get rewarded for doing things right, and in this case we got punished for maybe doing things wrong, and we got rewarded for kind of changing our mindset and doing things right. I would much rather lose as we're doing everything right, and only lose that way from here on out if possible, which probably isn't, but that's the goal, I think.
Yeah, shots were definitely falling. Bjorklund 26, Weisbrod comes 23 off the bench. I know that was something for me, just looking at the box score. I didn't get to watch much of the game. I did not expect that. But what did you see out of, I guess, him in particular, Weisbrod, that something that's maybe the first of many big box score appearances for him?
Yeah, I think it will be. If you look at our probably two best wins so far, Lewis and Duluth, in both games, he was our best player down the stretch. That court was full of, Drew Blair and Max Bjorklund are probably both going to be All-Americans. And the other guards in that game are chocked full of all-conference players. They have two more all-conference guards at Duluth. I think their bench guard will end up being an all-conference player. Brian will end up being an all-conference player. So there's all these all-conference players. I thought the best player on the floor was Max Weisbrod. He shot 6 times and had 23 points, 6 assists, 6 rebounds. He's been our best defender all year. He's just unbelievably rock solid. He plays like a fifth-year senior, but he's a true freshman. We knew going in, I think he's the, most highly touted, highest ranked kid, him and Brian, that we've ever brought in here. He had a lot of, pressure on him from himself, really, and a little bit from us. Like, we expected him to be awesome, and he's lived up to that, and we just got to keep him aggressive. Like, for our team to reach our height, he needs to be like he was against Duluth and Lewis. He can't just be a freshman role player. He has to learn how to become a star. And I think our biggest challenge, but also the thing that I'm the most optimistic about long term, is Dylan Keel and Max Weisbrod are probably two of our most talented guys. They're both freshmen, and at some point the light's going to come on for those two. I would love if it was today or tomorrow. Now they're both having awesome starts to the year. It'd be easy to say, wow, they're doing great. They're both probably right in the mix of freshman of the year. But those two have a lot more left than they've even shown. They're both incredible, and we're trying to push them to be incredible today, not wait on it, partly for Max Bjorklund's sake.
Yeah, and that's not a discredit. Brian, he came in with 22, and it's, I talk about those two guys. You come to expect a lot of those performances from Bjorklund,
Yeah.
right? Especially with all the accolades and things that he's received. But when you have a three-headed monster, for lack of a better term, like that, what does that do for that guard play as far as getting those guys in rhythm and really keeping a defense accountable?
Yeah, it's we feel really lucky. I think, and Carson Smith has struggled a little bit so far in the year, but he's going to come out of it. It's just a shooting slump. He's doing everything else great. So our guard group, I wouldn't trade for any guard group. We were even saying, I don't think I'd even trade individually any of them because they collectively fit so well. And they're still young, freshman, sophomore, redshirt sophomore, but it's the leadership they all have, even the young guys. It is how unselfish they are, where they share the ball with each other. And right now, we got to get our big guys better, but our guards are playing about as well as you could ask a group or a position group to play.
And what does that say about just the kind of guys and the kind of culture you have in that locker room, where you have a guy like you just talked about with Carson Smith, who frankly hasn't, like you said, hasn't been shooting all that great to start the year, but he's a guy you can count on to do everything else, right? To play hard defense, to get on the floor after what feels like every loose basketball. What does that say about the kind of team that in the kind of program that you're building?
Yeah, I think it says a lot. Our guys have done a great job of it's still relatively is year 4 for me, and we kind of flipped the whole team over in the last couple of years and have a whole new group. And the biggest thing is they've all bought in completely. I think we recruited a lot of kids that coming in were uniquely the best leaders that I'd seen when you watch them play high school and you watch them play AAU. And it was always kind of how long is it going to take them to get to the college level and be that same type of leader in person. Brian, I thought, last year had glimpses of being a good player, but he hadn't really taken over that leadership role. Now, Brian was the best high school leader I'd ever seen. Now Brian is that at the college level. It took him a year. And I think what Brian and Max Bjorklund have done such a great job of this year is they've let Max Weisbrod do that as a true freshman, just by allowing him to have input, allowing him to have say. The Concordia game, we're down 2. Max Weisbrod is the one that drew up the play for Max Bjorklund to score. So we have a true freshman trying to draw up a play with a minute and a half to go in the game, and it worked. So, I think that's the kind of stuff right now that's been really fun on a day-to-day level. There's a bunch of things we have to get better at, but that's been the biggest positive part and the most fun part. And I think Max Bjorklund is a fifth-year senior, deserves a ton of credit for allowing those guys to also have say. And then Carson, if you look back in the last 2 years, the number of 50-50 balls he's magically ended up in his hands in the biggest, most important moments, it seems like every one. So he could be 0 for 10 shooting, and we would still want him out on the floor because down the stretch of games, he makes winning plays, and he, I think, is as big a winner as anyone we've ever had, because it just magically ends up in his hands. And I don't even know. I mean, I know how, because he goes hard and, he's a psycho competitor, but, still it's how is this 6'1" guy, there's bodies everywhere, and he emerges with the ball, and you're like, okay, all right, that makes sense, I guess. It's Carson, so that's what he does. So, yeah.
So now we're getting into conference play this week, going back on the road. How do you feel like the non-conference schedule has prepared the Cats for the kind of basketball they're going to see out of the GLIAC teams going forward?
Yeah, I think two of the best teams. Hillsdale's number one in our region, and Duluth. I don't know what they've slipped to, but they're probably the second favorite in their region. So we've played the best. We've gotten some wins. Lewis and McKendree are still really good teams. Got those wins. So I really like the non-conference portion of the schedule. I think the challenge for us is realizing that we haven't really played awesome day in and day out. We've just scored awesome. And a lot of that scoring has to do with everything we just talked about, like the chemistry and how good those guards are and all that. But there's a ton of things that we need to fix that the win-loss is allowing us to get away with some of those things, some defensive things, some execution things, some post-play things. And we have to be honest with ourselves about the flaws while still being super excited that we're sitting at 5-2 and have some of the wins we have. And that's a tough mix. And I'm hoping the St. Cloud game, we can keep hammering that one home this is what happens when we don't shoot well if we don't change these other things. Because if we just rely on our shooting, will we be okay? For sure, because we're going to have some games where we just score. Are we going to be good? Probably, because I think those guards, again, are that good. Are we going to be great? No. We have to win when we're not shooting well, and we haven't. We did it once this year, but we haven't consistently done it, and that's what we're trying to get better at through practice right now.
So one of the teams that we'll be seeing this weekend is Parkside, which I know is huge for your squad, given the origins of a lot of these guys, and it only leaned more into that trend this offseason with big recruit. Dylan is playing this year. He's out of Wisconsin. Max W. Najashi, these are both Wisconsin guys as well who joined the team as freshmen. Is the rivalry with Parkside even bigger now, would you say?
I think that I don't know. I honestly think it's actually going away a little bit, because I think now it's just so obvious that the best players in Wisconsin are coming here. So it's no longer really a recruiting thing anymore, which is usually where some of that stuff kind of comes from. And we've split with them every year. I think and finished ahead of them every year, and haven't been really vying with them for We've had some important games against Ferris, and we've had some. So I don't know if it's a rivalry in the traditional sense, but what I will say is we're going to go to Parkside's gym, and the most friends and family that our players will play in front of all year is going to be at Parkside, and we've done it twice and we've lost twice and we haven't played very well. It's going to be full of northern people, not just the men's side but the women's side as well, and I think it's a huge deal for us to try to play our best in front of the people that we all care about the most, and that is something we haven't done a great job of yet, being 0-2 there. And that, for me, it's important to try to put them in a great position, because I know how much it means to all of them to win in front of, it's a lot of their parents and stuff come to our road games, but there's, uncles and aunts that don't have a chance to come up to the UP, that the one game they're going to see all year is at Parkside. I mean, I have probably 50 people coming, and, you want to win that game for those people. And so I think that's, to me, the importance of it, more so than any rivalry. I mean, I think their coach is great. I think their kids are great kids. It's not like a bitter thing, and we haven't, again, been really competing with them in the top of the standings at any point since I've been here, or even the bottom of the standings. We've been separated and all that. So it hasn't been that kind of rivalry, but I think it's important to, in front of everyone's friends and family, to get a win.
So then getting into the nuts and bolts of the games, Purdue Northwest, Parkside, basketball-wise, what do you see in these matchups for the Cats?
Yeah, I think both teams are really good. Going into the year, I actually thought both of them were comically underrated by the preseason poll stuff. I had both of them a lot higher than what the league did as a whole, and they've lived up to that. Right now, those two, us and Ferris, are the four teams with the best record in the league. Those are our first three games of conference, so it'll be interesting. Purdue is extremely talented, added a transfer that's, I think, one of the best players in the league. That's changed their program, and they have a lot more continuity than they've had in the past. And the guys they added, I think, were the right guys. And I think this is the most talented they've ever been, which the early results would show. And then Parkside is the perfect Parkside team. I've watched Parkside play for a long time, and this is when they've always been their best, when they have three guys that are clearly their best players, and then a bunch of guys that buy into roles. They've actually probably been more talented the last couple of years, and I think that's hurt them because they haven't played that typical way they play. They're tougher than everybody. They're more sound than everybody. They take the right shots. They almost play like a perfect basketball team. Are they the most talented team in the league? Probably not, but they understand their roles and play harder than anyone we've played up to this point. And so it's going to be a big challenge. It's the first weekend of conference is kind of like the first weekend of the season. Weird things happen. And so you just got to kind of, everyone's emotions are high and all that. So you just got to try to settle down and play normal, good basketball and, kind of see what happens, I guess.